brothers, who were the kirtan singers. We sing it every evening in the Gaur Arti. You remember that line? Huh? Yes. What's the line before that? Nara Hari 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 Shamara Dula Sanjaya and the Vast Adhikaya. So, those three personalities are transcendental figures in Krishna Lila, of course. They descended in Gaur Lila to assist Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's sweet, sweet pastimes of Audarya, distribution of Krishna Prema. So, and also today is Mahaprabhu Varaha Nagara. And where is Madhukar? Because I wanted to ask, what is this event? Other than just that his visit there, was there something that was outstanding? Why it's in our Vaishnava calendar?
Well, it's in all the 30 calendars. It's nothing. It's just the day that Mahaprabhu arrived. Varahanagar.
Where is that?
It's in Kolkata, like in Kolkata city. You go through it on your way to Kipuri.
Oh, okay. Okay, now I know.
It might be connected with that past time also with Lahava Pandit Jali, like the Buddhist prayer.
Oh.
And I think Śrīpāda Bhaktivedānta says something about this.
Okay. And today we are very honored that we can gather together here. So many devotees I'm looking at in the audience who had association with our beloved, worshipful Godbrother. Om Vishnupada Astatara Sata Śrīpāda Bhaktivedānta Avadhūta Mahārāja. Avadhūta Mahārāja ki. So, this morning I got a lead the other day from, who was it? Borderly. That in Hawaii they had a really nice remembrance gathering, so I looked it up on Facebook. And there it was. And I put my earphones in and I listened to all of the different offerings of the devotees, chief of which was Abhiram Prabhu. And I remember very, very clearly Abhiram Prabhu in those days, and he was narrating his first couple of years of association, non-stop, with Śrīpāda Bhaktivedānta. It was very, very amazing, wonderful, glorification. It inspired me. And so many other devotees also spoke something. So I think in the room here today there are quite a number of devotees and disciples of Avadhūta Mahārāja. On this day, it's a bittersweet memory for them, of course, because he departed from this world only just a few days back. But the indelible mark that he has left in our Sangha, and I'm going to tell you what impression came to me. Now, there are some devotees sitting here who also personally knew very, very well of another very famous disciple of Srila Prabhupada, who left his body before Prabhupada left his body. It started with the letter J. Who was that? Jayananda. If you ever met someone who had association with Jayananda, will raise your hand. Yes. So, but Jayananda was unique, so unique. That as far as I know, he's the only disciple of Srila Prabhupada who left this planet, even during Prabhupada's physical presence, still, he left, had cancer, and departed. But Srila Prabhupada actually told the devotees that you can honor this personality, Jayananda Prabhu, your god brother. Like we honor the different Vaishnavas, Acharyas, appearance and disappearance days on our Vaishnava calendar. As far as I know, I don't know if ISKCON calendar has included that. I know that the Pure Bhakti calendar has or hasn't. Hasn't.
ISKCON does.
ISKCON, but not the Pure Bhakti calendar. So that's another consideration. But I feel that Śrīpāda Bhaktivedānta Mahārāja is the Jayananda of Śrīpāda Bhaktivedānta Avadhūta Mahārāja's worldwide Sangha. And why do I feel that way? I'll tell you later when I speak. But first of all, I just wanted to say that, and I'm really looking forward to hearing deepest heart impressions of the devotees who knew him probably much better than I did, although I had his association over a period of years. I'll tell about that later. But I want to hear the impressions of Śrīpāda Bhaktivedānta Mahārāja, and this will be extremely purifying. Just like we always hear the shloka recited by Bhaktivedānta Avadhūta Mahārāja about how by remembering the gunagan, by singing the glories of pure Vaishnavas, then what happens? Well, the ropes of material existence just fall away. Very quickly you can enter into the praying dharma of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So now I want to turn the mic over to I don't know who wants to play the part of the MC, calling out the different Vaishnavas one by one. I think the disciples should go first. They should speak first, you know. And so I know that Damodar is one very shining example of a true disciple of Śrīpāda Avadhūta Mahārāja. So I want to turn over the microphone and request Damodar. Car, you want to aim this? Do you want to aim it to each speaker?
Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Krishnaya Bhutale Śrīpāda Bhaktivedānta Avadhūta Namane Panchakapatitya Dibbasu Kuñja Patitanam Bhagavatam Vaishnavebhyo Namo. First of all, I'd like to offer my obeisances to my Guru Padma, Om Vishnupada Sasta Śrīpāda Bhaktivedānta Avadhūta Mahārāja, my Harinam Guru, Om Vishnupada Sasta Śrīpāda Bhaktivedānta Avadhūta Mahārāja, all Rupanuga Gaudiya Guru Bhāra. Srila Prabhupada Saraswati Thakur and all his associates. I think probably everyone in this room, including Lakshmi, has known or been around Śrīpāda Avadhūta Mahārāja longer than I've known or been around him. But I was fortunate enough to spend a couple years traveling with him. So I got to see firsthand his Vaishnav behavior. First I'll tell a small biography. In 1946, January. In January 1946, he was born in California. I'm not sure what city. He was born in California. And as he approached his 20s, he was becoming more and more detached from material life. He was becoming very uninterested in what this world had to offer. And in 1968, while he was walking on, I think it was Berkeley Ave, one monk gave him a card that had the Maha Mantra written on it. So he would keep it in his car and he would chant it every day as he was driving. And eventually this chanting started to take over his mind, and he became very uninterested in prior activities. So then he was wanting to search for something more. And he asked his father, who was a commercial pilot, to take him to Australia. And on the way, he wanted to go to Hawaii, New Zealand, and then Australia. In Hawaii, he was very uninterested. He didn't like what it had to offer. So he went to New Zealand next, and he was hitchhiking. As he was hitchhiking, he was traveling with these two strangers, and they were eating meat, and he became his heart was very pained by that. So he decided to hitchhike all over, like by foot, all over New Zealand. And he was thinking he wanted to settle there, but he felt called that he has to go to Australia. So then he went to Australia, and he was going all over Sydney and different cities, I'm not sure the city names. And it was there that he met one devotee who had just opened an ashram. So they invited him to this ashram where he felt like, oh, finally I found my calling. And they're chanting this mantra that I was given on this card. And they started engaging him in the kitchen and making Simply Wonderfuls and all kinds of other, he loves Simply Wonderfuls so much. So then, later on, he received initiation from Srila Prabhupada via mail, and I had heard he was the first initiated disciple of Srila Prabhupada in the southern hemisphere. So then as time went on, later also in 1968, it was only just a month or two after he arrived. So then in 1981, he then decided he would go on a preaching tour in West Africa. I believe he went with Mukunda Prabhu and Bhaktivedānta Mahārāja. So he was there for 9 years. And during this 9-year period, after this 9-year period, he started to hear about Srila Gaur Govinda Maharaj. And then very shortly after that, in 1997, he came into the association of Srila Gurudev Srila Bhaktivedānta Narayan Goswami Maharaj, where he then became his Siksha disciple, and in 2004 took sannyas from Srila Gurudev in Navadvip. In 2018 is when I met Bhaktivedānta Avadhūta. I myself was in my 22, as he was when he was finding out about all this. And I had met one of his disciples in North Carolina, Krishadas, who shared with me all this knowledge from Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam. And I became very interested when I went home later for those, it was like 6 hours from my home. And then for those 2 weeks, I was praying continuously, please, Krishna, you have to send me Guru. You have to send me Guru. I don't know how to find one, so you have to send me. And then next thing you know, this big hurricane came, so I had to evacuate. So I went to the devotee's house for 2-3 weeks. And it was at this time that Avadhūta Maharaj was driving from Sydney, Texas, at the new Gokul farm. They drove, I don't know how, he drove from Texas all the way to North Carolina. I think it's like 18-hour drive, something like that.
A small car with motor.
Small car. This little cube Honda thing. So the devotee telling me, oh, he'll be here. He's coming for the second time only, and he's driving all the way from Texas. So it'll be some time, maybe 5 p.m. he'll arrive. So okay, we have time. So that night I went to go to sleep on the couch, and then at like 5 a.m. the door just flies open, and I see Avadhūta Maharaj just standing there, kind of looking around, like checking out the place. And he walks in, and everyone starts to panic, and shuffling around, trying to organize things because we weren't prepared for 12 hours earlier, an 18-hour drive. We weren't expecting him to be so early. So then they told me they have to prepare, get Vogue and prepare all these things. He told me, don't worry, he's going to take tests. You don't have to worry about anything. So I'd never been around a sannyasi before. I didn't know anything. I was maybe like 3 weeks into Krishna consciousness. So he went to this room to retire, take rest after. And right when the devotees left and closed the door, he came out and sat on the couch. So I'm like panicking. I don't know how to serve a sannyasi. I don't even know what a sannyasi is. So I just sat on the floor in front of him and was waiting for any instruction. And he just looked at me very quickly for like 20-30 seconds. So, you want initiation, don't you? I was like, yes. That's what I've been praying for. I said, okay. Your name is now Damodar, and in 2 weeks we'll do a ceremony. I was like, okay, 2 weeks or maybe the following weekend, I can't remember. I said, okay, what do I do? I said, shave your head, get ready. I was like, okay. So that was how I met Śrīpāda Bhaktivedānta Avadhūta Mahārāja. And at this time I was in the military. I was based in the East Coast, North Carolina, like on the ocean. I met him in Asheville, North Carolina, so it was like 6 hours away. And he told me to come to India with him. And this was in September, October. He told me in February, come to India with me for 1 month. So, okay. So I didn't have any leave or anything that I was able to take from work. I didn't have any money, but I just put it on the credit card, and I told my higher up, I said, I'm going to go for 1 month. He said, you only have 3 weeks you're allowed to take, right? And I said, you have to take care of, like, you have to put it in the books or something, because I'm going. And so then, by some amazing arrangement of just wanting to follow Śrīpāda Avadhūta Mahārāja's desire for me to go with him to India, it was then Christmas Eve, and I was working a 24-hour shift. And at 11:59 p.m., I get an email on my government laptop, and suddenly I get this email that says, your medical separation from the U.S. military has been processed. You're getting out in 2 weeks. So just like that, my whole contract was up. I don't have to worry about leave. I don't have to worry about bosses or anything like this. I can just go. I don't have any more contract holding me back. So it was a wonderful arrangement of Śrīpāda Avadhūta Mahārāja. So then I came to India, and he ended up not coming for some time. I think he went to, I can't remember where he went. He went to some other country first, maybe in South America, I can't remember. But during this time in India, it was very overwhelming. And I started to have really, out of nowhere, I just started to have really sharp doubts about the whole process and everything. And I was supposed to leave, my flight was in 2 days. And everyone I came with left. It was my first time in India. And 2019. I was staying, for some time I was staying in NVT, and then some time I was staying in Radhakunj. So then I was supposed to miss my flight. I was supposed to take my flight, but I ended up deciding to miss my flight. And everyone else left. I decided I've lost all of my inspiration. I've lost bhakti. I've heard the only way to get it back is serving Sri Guru, so I'm going to stay until he comes. So then he called me and he was like, oh, I'm arriving in 3 days. I was like, perfect. So I went up to Delhi and met him at the airport, and we came to Vrindavan. And it was almost immediate. My faith came back, just immediately upon seeing him. And from then on, we traveled together, maybe 1 or 2 months in India, 1 month in India. And then we went to Bali, where there's Atmaram Ishwar Prabhu. He's opened one temple in Bali. So we were staying there for maybe 2 weeks or so. And then he wanted me to go to China with him, but I couldn't manage that at the time. Yeah, in Bali, we would have programs daily, maybe 10, 15, 20 people would come every day. We had programs in like the main area next to the airport, all the way up in Ubud, and other areas of Bali, but he would like to go to the beach regularly and go for japa walks and do sankirtan. So then later on, I came back to America, and he had just came back just 1 month later, so I had heard he was at the farm in Texas, so I went to go see him. And I ended up staying at the farm as long as he was there, and then Sri Lokanath Prabhu, he told me we were going to do this Bhakti Beehive tour. It was like a grand via RV with a trailer, and we had this 20 by 20 like octagon shaped tent, and we would set up an altar and do book distribution, Sankirtan. We started in Texas and worked our way to Southern California and all the way up to like Washington border of Canada and back down towards Southern California. And then during that time, it was myself, Sri Lokanath, Devendra, some of you know, and other people were joining along the way, and most of we were trying to get in contact with all different like festival venues and stuff like this. We're trying to get in anywhere and just set up. Sometimes we even just set up in empty parks and just made a whole festival of our own. But also, Srila Avadhūta Mahārāja was with us for those whole 6 months, and we were living in just one small, medium RV this whole time. So I really got to see what is his behavior, how does he act, how does he practice. And day in, day out, he was the same, all the way through. His chanting was so fixed, it was more austere than any of us. And he even in such older age, he was maybe 72, 3, 4, 2 at this time. He had more energy than any of us. And during this whole 6 months tour, for about like 8 hours a day, he would have us go do book distribution and Sankirtan on the streets. We would just set up, sometimes walking, sometimes setting up tapestries, sometimes going into really scary areas. So it was, he really had this mood of just wanting to give. He just wanted everyone to know about Krishna consciousness, to know about Mahamantra, to get these books of Srila Prabhupada and Srila Gurudev. Even once he had me go, and the others, we found a whole strip of houses, maybe like each block was half a kilometer. We had to knock on every single door. We went up and down all these strips, knocking on all these doors, offering books. If we found a garage sale, we would try and trade books for garage stuff. And just any excuse to give books out. So during that 6 months travels, I ended up in, about halfway through, I ended up in Braj, where he told me that he doesn't plan on giving Diksha to anyone anymore. So if I want it, I have to take from Śrīpāda Bhaktivedānta Avadhūta Mahārāja. So trusting him, I did this. And during this time of traveling with Avadhūta Mahārāja is where we met in New Braj. Guru Maharaj, Bhaktivedānta Mahārāja. Before Śrīpāda Avadhūta Mahārāja had even told my Guru Maharaj that he wanted to hand me to him, my Guru Maharaj came to me and he said, "Do you know what your name means?" I said, "Yeah, it means waist bound by ropes of love and affection." This is just what I heard. He said, No. This means your Avadhūta Mahārāja, he's going to untie this rope and give it to me for some time. And then I'm going to tie you back to him." And then it was only 3 days later that Śrīpāda Avadhūta Mahārāja told him that he wants him to give me Diksha. So then, during this time, I then suddenly got sent off to travel with my Guru Maharaj throughout India and West Bengal Prachara for 6 months, including Kartik and Gaura Purnima. And then suddenly COVID came. And so I had to go, I was called in the middle of that. I was called by Atma Rameshwar in Bali. He asked me to do Pujari Seva for 1 month. So I went and I had left some belongings. So then when my visa was expiring, it was the same time that COVID came. So I was thinking I'll go to Bali, get a new visa, come right back for Pujari. But the day I arrived, 2 hours later, was lockdown started. So for 2 weeks it was nice and Bali is wonderful. But I was feeling really like deprived of association. My only place I could go was America because of my status as a citizen there. So I was praying so much as I was serving every day. The Thakurjis there, I was praying to them, please, I have to have an association with Avadhūta Mahārāja. He's the only one I know in America that I can go to and receive Sadhu Sangha. And then, after so many canceled flights, suddenly I was taken back. And then I was traveling again with Śrīpāda Bhaktivedānta. I stayed there for maybe 2.5 months. And then we drove together in a van. We went to all the way from Texas to North Carolina and down to the Alachua Temple. So that was another 3 months at the farm, and then another 1.5 month.
That was during the lockdown.
During the lockdown, we were traveling
You
in
never
this.
got locked down?
No. And I had this really small van, but somehow we squeezed in there, the two of us, and traveling all around. But then I ended up, that van broke down. I ended up being stuck in Alachua. Right when we got there, it completely totaled. Like it just, I turned it on the next day and the van was totaled. It wouldn't, no mechanic could fix it. So then Avadhūta Mahārāja was like, okay, I'm going back to Texas. You stay here and do Pujari Seva. I was like, okay. So during this time, on and off, I got maybe to meet him, Virginia, New York, Philadelphia, with him and Bhaktivedānta Mahārāja, and we would go different house programs and Harinam Sankirtan. I had heard that Śrīpāda Avadhūta Mahārāja was so attached to Harinam Sankirtan, like anything, you wouldn't believe it. When he was in the LA temple, he would go every single day, despite other people wanting to go or not. Go every single day. He was like the leader of the Kirtan party. And even when the LA temple closed, his natural renounced nature, he decided he'll just go sleep under a tree on the beach and he'll still go and do Sankirtan every day. So he lived like that, just going tree to tree in LA. And like anyone says, he really lived up to his name of Avadhūta. Everyone says it. One moment he's in China, next moment he's in Brazil, next moment he's in India, he's back in America. He was really unconventional too. He did things his way, and if you couldn't follow that program, you were left behind. But during this time of traveling with him, I would see that he was the most humble personality I'd ever seen. He was just very quiet, very internal. But if you asked anything, if anyone asked anything, he would give all of his time to answer it in such a simple way. So then during this this time of traveling with him, and then there was some break, he went somewhere and I was stuck in Alachua, and then eventually I came back to Mayapur as things started to become allowed to travel again. And he was staying in America, and so it's somehow by some chance it ended up that for 2 years I didn't get to see him. After being with him non-stop for like my whole beginning of Krishna consciousness journey, then suddenly for 2 years I wasn't with him at all. And I had wrote to him, this was at an earlier time, it's getting a little blended, but I had written to him at some point where I was not with him for quite a while. I had messaged him, a voice message saying that I want to travel with you again. This has been too long, I can't handle it anymore. And his last message I ever got from him before he kind of stopped talking and all that, last message I received from him was, "You already live in my heart, so you should travel with me forever." So then I had heard about his cancer, and I was hearing it's not looking so well. Suddenly I got a call from Sri Lokanath saying Gurudev wants to come to Mayapur, but he refuses to go until he can walk without his walker. So then I was thinking, I'll never see him again. How is it going to be possible? His condition's getting worse and worse. And then suddenly he calls me, or leaves me a message, and he's saying, my cancer is gone, I feel all of my strength back, I'm coming to Mayapur, where should I stay? I said, give me 30 minutes, I'll arrange everything. So I got back to him, I arranged that with Śrīpāda Prabhu, that he can stay here, Bhaktivedānta Kuñja. So then he messaged me back saying, okay, great, I'm coming in 3 days. And he never told Sri Lokanath, he never told anyone else that he was with. On the very night before, he said, oh, Sri Lokanath, you have to book me an Uber because I'm going to India. He was trying to sneak out. Even in such so much sickness, it was still his nature. It was kind of like a little playful like that.
He announced cancer was gone.
Yeah.
Very strong.
Yeah. Avadhūta. Right. So then suddenly he came just a few days later, and his condition was okay, clearly getting worse, but we were thinking maybe the travel really toughened him out. But he was able to shower on his own at first. He was able to walk to the bathroom, sit up. And then day by day it was getting gradually. Every day was something new. It was getting worse and worse and worse. And then about 5 days before he disappeared, we were outside, just right here. And he was expressing that he no longer wants to be here. And all day he was just laying out in the field, and this huge storm, I hadn't seen a storm like this since, it was way early for the season too, but I hadn't seen a storm like this in a few years. Last time I saw a storm like that was in 2020. It was so impressive. And it was just lightning without any rain, lightning for a couple hours, and we were just doing kirtan. Sri Lokanath, Devendra and I were just doing kirtan. This was from mid-afternoon all the way into the evening, 7 or 8 p.m., something like this. And we were just doing really gentle kirtan the whole time. And then eventually this downpour was coming, so we got back up to the room. We were thinking he's choosing to go now all this storm and everything. Oh my gosh. But then, just right outside, yeah. And so then, every day after that, the next day, he told us it's time to go. He said, it's time for me to go. He said, I have to go to the pathway. Maybe he needs the bathroom, the hallway, maybe he wants to walk or something. We didn't want to think that, And then he was like, what time is it? Is it day or night? And then after that he was saying, it's one choice or the other. I have to decide. So then he asked us to sit him up, and he's sitting fully erect in full lotus, his legs crossed, and he was holding this Rudraksha bead, and he was trying to leave his body. And this would happen about 3 to 4 times a day, every day leading up to when he actually left his body. So it's very mystical, this nature. Despite how sick he was, somehow when he was deciding it was time to go, he couldn't even sit up out of bed without some assistance. I think most everyone here saw it. But when he would decide he wanted to go, he would get sat and straight up, and sometimes japa, sometimes with a Rudraksha bead, and he would just close his eyes, and he would try to leave. So this was happening 3-4 times a day for the last 4 or 5 days leading up to his disappearance. And then came the time, it was 6:40 a.m. when he left on Mahadwarasi leading up to Gaura Purnima. Devendra and I were thinking, we'll go on Parikrama real quick and come back. We'll be back by 9:30, 10 a.m. latest. And right when we were one kilometer from Mamagachi, we got a phone call from Sri Lokanath saying, turn around. Maharaj has left. So then we started making all the preparations. I went to Chaitanya Gauriya and I requested a garland from Nityananda Prabhu. From the Panchatattva deities, I requested garland from the Pujari to it. And I called my Guru Maharaj and he told me to put this garland around his feet and put tulsi on his head in tongue, lips. And then so many devotees were coming, and everything suddenly was just getting arranged. They were thinking maybe samadhi will happen at Kesavji Gaudiya Math. There was some stuff that came up that it couldn't happen. So it was decided what else to do. We have to do cremation, and we know that Bhaktivedānta Mahārāja was also cremated when he left this world. So we're thinking, okay, this is no issue. There's no disrespect by doing this. So yeah, then this big procession came. So many devotees from Kesavji Gaudiya Math and all over Mayapur came. We went on this big procession. I think many of you were here. We went on this procession with Sankirtan to God. We did the cremation ceremony. Now I actually have his urn, like his ashes is urned, and recently was told that we can do his Pushpa Samadhi to where the other Samadhis are, just a couple Samadhis to the left of Gauranga Setu Bridge in Navadvip. So I'm not sure of the date that's going to happen, but when we find out, I'll write into the group chats and arrange.
Also, Bhagavad Maharaj told me that they saved some flowers from his body, which they intend to use as Pushpa Samadhi, that even in America they can use.
Yeah, so some flowers were saved, the flowers that were around his feet, and some of the cloth was torn off. And there's plans for there to be a Pushpa Samadhi in Nuvokul, maybe other parts of America too, I don't know, but also there's 2 or 3 locations in Mexico where Avadhūta Mahārāja preached very heavily. He was even on radio shows and TV shows, and so in Mexico also they're going to be doing Pushpa Samadhis as well. Okay. I want to hear from everyone else because I think all of you have had much more association than me. You've known him since, some of you have known him since the 70s, 60s. So I'd like to hear out. Vanchakopatrupishcha kipasnakircha patitanam bhavniko vaishnavabhyo namo.
Is there any other disciple? No other disciple physically present?
Just to give an idea of who has sent reminiscence, Hari Sori Prabhu, who was brought to Krishna consciousness. He's here in Mayapur, and he's sent, I have not listened to it, he sent a voice message. And when he was in, it was described by Damodar Prabhu that there was a devotee in Australia that he met that happened to be Prabhupada's first personal servant, his personal servant in 1967. Who was there? And he was the first devotee that joined. He was an American in Australia. Also, in times of chronology, there are messages from both Shanta Maharaj and Mukunda Das Prabhu, who were with him in Africa. Also Sadananda Prabhu has sent something, and Jayanta Prabhu also, who were with him in the 90s when he was doing Gopal this course. So, and plus there are beautiful remembrances. One from Gopanandini Devi that I thought Miss Cynthia, she's here, would read. And is Rishikesh Prabhu here? Okay, good, because he has the same accent as Prajandananda Prabhu. Yes. So we thought he could read Prajandananda Prabhu's argument. And I wish Cynthia was here.
I can read it. Is my god sister Govinda Nandini?
Yes. Yeah, when Nishinti's here, we have such precious memories. Yes, of him in the Rose. Well, actually, first it was a temple before the Venice Rose Temple on Dudley. There's a house there. So we were two, actually, including him, we were 3 of 7 trustees of the International Bhaktivedānta Society, 3 Prabhupada disciples. So we weren't, could never be a majority, but fascinating things. How he would behave not only in meetings, but completely ignoring them, because he knew that Prabhupada didn't like bureaucracies, and this is what it was. His first time was in ISKCON in Prabhupada's time. They didn't have such things, and things went more quickly. But Mahārāja's standards, and he's Avadhūta, but he never neglected the mood and methods of his gurus. So no matter what was decided by a board, if they were contrary to those standards, he was Avadhūta in the sense he just completely ignored those and would do whatever he wanted, and he was always right. I can tell you that, just personally. Sometimes I would have, like, Maharaj, we have to do this or that, or we would do something just outrageous. And I'd say, Maharaj, and he would explain to me perfectly how, no, this is what Prabhupada would want, this is what Guru did would want. And he would defeat me every time. He was always right, and I was always wrong. There's nothing I can say except that. But I'll tell you some of those incidents that were just, they're hilarious. He was really, the humor that he would invoke, was just by his nature. It's just, one time my wife told me in an early meeting, IGPS, 7 trustees, she said, I would just look at his face during the whole meeting. Just look at his face. So I did. I would just look at his face. Amazing. His eyes, those deep kind of, what would you call them, turquoise, blue eyes. He would listen, and you could tell just by looking at his eyes, he not only understood everything that was said, he understood, more importantly, the intentions of everybody and what was said. And how do you express this? With his eyebrows. And this is what Nishin wanted to see. He had the most expressive eyebrows. I couldn't believe, the way they were like, just one would go up and then another, or they'd go like this. And it was just so expressive. And you could tell, just by looking at his face, you could see how he was seeing everything and reacting. And it was just so point on. I learned more from looking at him than looking at any of the speakers, or, this is how I could tell those things. Such an individual whose consciousness was so above ours, actually. Yet, now I'm talking, this will just be my time, but your time. The Rose Temple, I don't know how much I have to disclose here. I have to disclose something. But it was a very unusual arrangement, because there are many devotees that come from England. And this is the first time in Southern California. And hey, it's Los Angeles, it's Venice Beach. And their first thought was, well, wait a minute, we're here in Hollywood. We got to preach, we got to go Hollywood. And so that meant dressed in real sharp, like that, getting $300 sunglasses. That's like, we got to preach to the people we want to preach to here. But Avadhūta Mahārāja, do you think he took into consideration this idea that this should be the mood and policy of the temple? Quite the opposite. He would dress very much like an Avadhūta. And so, and sometimes in the meetings they go, hey, even though he's senior to all of us, he's a sannyasi, and really recognize him. But they said, Maharaj, you gotta get a little more spiffy there. You gotta, he just looked, it was completely, they thought they were talking down to him. They didn't even know what was up or down. And so, and if Shinty and I would intervene and say, you have no idea, where his consciousness is. It should be a lot more respectful like that. And one thing I found out about in classes, now, when he would give class, at least at that time, in the Venice Rose Temple, he would be so self-effacing or reticent, that you would have to get very close to him to hear him. Even though it doesn't matter microphone, because he would just, I don't want to say mumble, but he would just speak very softly. But if you did, if you were intelligent enough to do so, his classes were so high. Not just from Siddhanta perspective, and to the Lila Katha, always with references from Shastra. But he would never do it, in a I want to say, a way that would promote, himself. He was so reticent. So he never wanted to, assume the position of which he was qualified. He just always wanted to stay Avadhūta. In so many situations in the temple, because there was one side that was thinking, okay, well, wait a minute, who's coming to the temple here? You have basically two broad categories. We were right on the borderline of Santa Monica and Venice. And up to the north, into Santa Monica, there were a dozen yoga studios. And down to the south, into Venice, there was another dozen yoga studios. And so who was drifting by, curious about this temple? All these yoginis. But what other element is there in Venice Beach? There is the very distraught, homeless population, mostly men, that are really, really in a bad way. But Avadhūta Mahārāja never bent on this. He said, Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda have come to save the most fallen. And it's our mandate from our gurus too. We're to go there. So he would take the Sankirtan party, the Harinam Sankirtan party, daily. Would go down. We joined him at times, but not as steadily as he was. Every day. And of course, he would bring them back. The ones that at least wanted some prasadam. And then you had all the yoginis coming, right? And so the culture clash was just something else. It was funny. It was funny even at the time. But of course, there were those that say, well, wait a minute. These ladies have careers, yoginis, they're vegetarians, have money. Whatever it was thought that we should cultivate that side. But then on the other side, what do they have? Nothing. They're not even well behaved or bathed. But Maharaj was adamant that we have to help these people. And how could I argue with him? Because even though I had a sentiment one way, he had arguments another way, which were easily able to defeat those sentiments. And sometimes he would even move into the temple. At one point, he just, because the temple board would say, okay, we've got to be clear. We can't have any drug addicts. We can't have any crazies here. And then right after the board meeting, Avadhūta Mahārāja would invite, 3 godbrothers, Prabhupada disciples, who were big book distributors and had a history and were presently distributing books. They just also happen to be cocaine addicts. And he just moved them into the temple. And I said, Maharaj. And then on the other side, he would invite certifiably, have been in institutions, crazy people, and I said, Maharaj, we just had a meeting, and he'd go, what is the temple for? What is the temple for? It's a hospital. These are our godbrothers, and they're distributing Prabhupada and Gurudev's books. What can I say? He was feeding me. And the crazy people, it's a hospital. If they stay here, engaged, they will get purified. What is the temple for? What can I say? He was right. That's what I'm saying on all these points, even though it looked totally bizarre. That was his Avadhūta thing. Actually, his policies were based very firmly in our Vaishnava traditions. So he was an Avadhūta, or very unconventional, according to any kind of mundane social standards, but his same Avadhūta nature kept him very much close to the heart of our Guru. That's enough for now. I actually thought of so many things, but I want to hear them. So, just to give you another example, I gotta say this, because it was hilarious. Actually, it was very serious. But there's this boy, born of Vaishnava parents, actually very well-known Vaishnava parents. And he moved into the temple, even though he was Barney, as the British guys would say. But we had arranged for him to have counseling from the state of California. And he had a personal counselor hanging there to the temple. And he was taking psychiatric drugs. And the counselor assured us that, if he just stays with his programs, I will get him an $850 a month allowance for life. We thought, oh wow, this is great for him, and for life he'll be, safe, because he was a person who'd been homeless, living in the streets and this and that, and his father was very happy and all that. But what did Avadhūta Mahārāja do? He very perceptibly saw, and he was right. He said, this counselor of his, he's grooming him. He's a predator. He wants to exploit him sexually. He's like, yeah. And then, when he came and, I got to see through Mahārāja's eyes, oh my God, this is true. And so he got him to stop taking all the psychiatric drugs, because he said, if you have faith in the process, if purification takes place, he won't need these things. He says, if you don't believe that, then what do you believe? And so he was challenging me. He said, well, there's going to be $900 a month if he just goes along with the program for a little while. And he says, Krishna's maintaining everybody. Why do you have faith in something else in the state of California? Especially when it comes with conditions like this, that he has to associate with a predator and he has to take psychiatric drugs. And I go, okay, Maharaj, you defeated me again. What can I say? Everybody is upset. So many were. So he was Avadhūta to them, but actually, again, he was very much in love with our Vaishnava tradition. It's so pure. Okay, there are a lot of other devotees who want to speak, and I do want to play these sound bites. So I'll just ask you, who do you want to hear from first? We can have all the devotees speak, and then the sound files after.
We can play a couple of the sound files and then the
Okay, some of these I have not heard. Bhaktivedānta Prabhu is the person who
Are they
established
really short sound files?
yes, the Bhaktivedānta Research Center in Calcutta. He was Prabhupada's personal servant for a while. And what's his son after Prabhupada came up? I've not heard this. His wife Sitala just sent this. So I don't know what's going to play. He also has MS, and so it's hard for him to speak or walk. Very sorry, but he has sent something in regards to Avadhūta Mahārāja. It looks like it is 11 minutes long.
What comes after that?
Well, I'm just doing it chronologically. We met in Australia, so the next devotees are Shanta Maharaj and Mukunda, who sent a very beautiful book. And it was, and what Mukunda sent was okay.
How many minutes are the other ones?
So Hari Sari first and then Bhagavad Maharaj.
How many minutes?
Huh?
How many minutes are the other ones besides Hari Sari?
Actually, Mukunda's is quite short, but it's so concise. You know, Sadananda Prabhu is 14 minutes, and Shanta Maharaj wants to do a live one. So, okay. So, in what order I'd like me to direct? Okay, very good. Very sorry. Well, don't look at it fast. That's natural voice. He already has it.
Hare Krishna. Namaskar for Krishna, Krishna Devacha, Patitanam Pavadikyo, Vaishnaveyo, Namaha. So, I would like to say a few words about His Holiness Avadhūta Swami, formerly known as Upanandita. In 1971, I had moved to Australia for England, and at that time I was seriously seeking out some answers to the question, who am I, why I'm here, why am I subjected to death? And so when I arrived in Sydney, I put on one day off the boat, myself and a small group of friends, we met the devotees for the first time, and I brought a bag of Godhead magazine from them. After that, I went to northwestern Australia for 6 months to earn some money. Whilst I was there, I was kept interested in isolation of the place, and I would read through the contents of the Bhaktivedānta. At first, I didn't really become apparent what it was all about, but I knew that there was something about this literature which was important, and so I kept it back whenever I felt the need. I would take the magazine down and read through the different articles. By Christmas 1971, it was until fine. And I decided that I needed to go back to Sydney to find these people. And I'm still in the magazine, and see if I could get the answers to my questions. So I travelled back in January of 1972. I had a stopover in Melbourne, Sydney, and I was 8 hours stay over. So I thought I would take a walk around Melbourne, which I got in trains to. So as I was walking around the city, I heard the tea out, and I came around into the city square, and there was a small group of devotees chanting, and so I was very happy to see that. And so I went up to one of the devotees that was selling Bhaktivedānta magazines. The person that I approached was Bhaktivedānta. So when we got talking, I had one burning question. What is God? So I asked Bhaktivedānta. So to his credit, he read the 3 or 4 different issues of Bhaktivedānta that he had with it. And as soon as I asked this question, he immediately went to the lead article, one of the Bhaktivedāntas, and Prabhupada gives a description that's got in this article. And he read it out. God is omnipotent, God is omniscient, God is everywhere, omnipresent, and God is a person, and his name is Krishna. So I kept my finger in the spot in the magazine where the description was given, and Bhaktivedānta was quite excited. And so they came up and actually asked him who God was. Tried to persuade him, and I told him that I'm actually on my way back to Sydney to find the temple there. He was very enlightened, and he told me we just started a new temple here in Melbourne, and he would come and stay with us. But I was at that point not quite on the point of surrendering. But I like to consider him as a very gentle person, and very serious as well. So I went down by the riverbank in the railway station, and I read through this description that Prabhupada had given, and I had an epiphany. It was a moment of realization. I stood at the door and I exist as a person. And I read Robert says his name is Krishna. And this is amazing. You've got a name. So from reading this scripture, then I realized that this is true. God is everywhere. He knows everything. And he's in control of everything. Then there's nowhere where God is making everything do. But he doesn't know where I am. So I thought, actually accept this and have to join these people. So that was it. I did in fact join the temple a couple of weeks later, February 1972, and I met with the owner again later on. The Christian consciousness movement expanded in Australia, and we had a good relationship. He was a very friendly guy, and serious about particularly his devotional life. So he was the second person that I met, second devotee that I met. The first one was my Rani Dasi, wife of Sharon Bass in Utah Spanish school, and she had told me that first Bhaktivedānta in 1971, and then we presented it as the second Bhaktivedānta in inside too. So that's just a little bit over the years. We've done our services in different places. So I never had a chance to really work closely with him again. But I know very glad to hear that he came into my airport and that he's successfully cooked his body here in India. So that's all glorifying. And
Bhaktivedānta Avadhūta Mahārāja.
Tell who it is first.
Now we're going to hear the clarification by Śrīpāda Bhaktivedānta Avadhūta Mahārāja.
Hare Krishna. I just wanted to say a few words about Śrīpāda Avadhūta Mahārāja. He was a very great soul, and I was very fortunate to have his association. I really appreciated how humble he was, and I used to think about emulating that humility, or trying to learn how to be humble like him, because he was such a sweet, humble soul. But he was also completely independent and did whatever he liked, because he always liked to do what it was that served the Vaishnavas and served Krishna. He was a great saint, and I was honored to be present at his disappearance. I humble obeisances of the lotus feet of Avadhūta.
This is Mukunda Prabhu, where you'll see the nature of his elevation just by hearing him, but he worked with Avadhūta Maharaj in West Africa for many years. He'll explain this.
From Alachua, Florida. Myself and Pujapāda Avadhūta Mahārāja, we spent much time serving together over the years. Beginning when he came to serve in Africa back in the 80s. And at that time I was preaching in Africa from 1979 going forward. Maharaj came both to Ghana and to Nigeria and did much service there in West Africa to help establish and pioneer Srila Prabhupada's movement. Maharaj also had spent a great deal of time when he first came to Srila Gurudev. We were able to spend some time together. Very happy that both of us had realized that after serving Srila Prabhupada's mission in that way, that there was a great blessing that we would have now mutual service to Srila Gurudev. Maharaj was very much detached from the material world. He looked forward only to traveling and preaching and doing seva. And all the while he was doing this, he was very unassuming. He was not demanding any post or demanding any posture. He simply went about serving Gurudev in a very quiet and humble way, but inspiring many devotees throughout the world. Maharaj never thought so much for his own welfare. He visited places, only thought if that place was suitable to possibly do some seva to Srila Gurudev. He never considered comfort If he came and there was no place to stay, I would accept the most humblest of accommodations, whether it was sleeping on a couch in the front room or somewhere in a small corner. He would take some rest. So Maharaj obviously was in our presence, demonstratively such a great example of what it means to be a sannyasi. So I'm praying ongoing that Maharaj will bestow his mercy on me and remember our fond times together and the saving that we've done together. And perhaps give me just a drop of his reason and humility. These are two very foundational things to the teachings of Mahaprabhu. Pranana Pisunichana, and Mahaprabhu was Vairagya Pradhan, means he was by foundation detachment from the world. So Maharaj was a complete exemplar of that. And again, because he was so unassuming and so humble, you never felt it by him posturing himself like that. It was just naturally observable in his behavior and in the way he conducted himself with others. Though he was very senior to me, actually, he always treated me with the utmost respect and affection, just like a brother. So again, I pray to Maharaj that he may bestow his causes mercy, and that we have found complete success in his Bhajan city at the lotus feet of Shri Radha Krishna Yuga Mahaprabhu. Jai Kuñja Maharaj Maharaj Ki Jai.
He also sent a written offering. Should I read?
Also Santa Maharaj?
That's a lie. Oh, he wants Shant, yeah.
Shanta Maharaj is calling.
He wants to call in.
Okay. So, could you say something about that?
So in the 1990s, Śrīpāda Avadhūta Mahārāja, he had a lot of qualifications. Even though he was a renunciate, he could make money very easily. He had a business, a very successful business, bliss bars. And even Zane Marley came and invested his presence and he was packaged along with the hemp bliss bars that were going out there. And he managed to get him to market them for money. But he had a very ongoing business, big business that he did with Jayanta Prabhu.
And also Satnanda.
And Satananda, yeah, the three of them. That's when I first met Maharaj, and I was impressed mostly that he had found Srila Govinda Maharaj, and learned first about Govinda Maharaj. And so he had this business, it made a lot of money, and I said this before, I'll say it again, with the money he made at the end, when he decided to just retire and surrender to Gurudev completely, path of sannyas, he, instead of paying the taxes that were due, that's how Chaiva Dharma was first published. Avadhūta again.
So here's the remembrance of Jayanta. So unfortunately, I won't be at the April 6th remembrance of Avadhūta Mahārāja Festival. Kindly accept this humble, loving offering at his lotus feet with application. I remember on one Vajra festival, before Maharaj took sannyas from our most beloved Srila Guru, after Mangalarti, devotees would start clamoring for rides on the way to the intimate morning walk state. By Krishna's divine arrangements, Maharaj and I found ourselves without a ride. Fortunately, one very devotee, offered us a ride. When we got there, from a distance, we could see the masses of numerous devotees. We paid our dandavats towards them. Then Srila Gurudev and the fortunate morning walk devotees reversed direction and were moving towards us. As we moved towards them, and we could see Srila Guru leading the assembly devotees with the cows on either side of them, grazing and gazing, having darshan of Srila Gurudev and the devotees, ensuring their successful next births. We can see Srila Gurudev looking at us intently. Immediately we paid our loving dandavats again. And as we got closer to Srila Gurudev, he said, looking at Avadhūta Mahārāja, "Oh, Upanata Guru, you're just now arriving from the Bliss Park factory?" I could see Avadhūta Mahārāja's face turn pale as we looked at each other. Since Maharaj was my senior in age, seva, and bhakti, Gurudev awarded him the sas, the treat, the chastisement. But in actuality, it was Srila Gurudev's causeless mercy that eventually led to Maharaj making sannyas. I've since learned from this, when I too received my chastisement from Gurudev, that even though, as conditioned souls, it's more palatable to receive a pat on the head, the spiritual reality is that being chastised by Shri Guru is more potent for our edifications, as we are then reminded of our true constitutional position as a servant of the servants of the servants, and less likely for us to become puffed up with praises and always reminding ourselves to be a humble fool at the lotus feet of Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Hare Krishna. With love and affection, Jayanta Das.
Prabhu is responsible for many videos that Gurudev's tour in Southern California and Bangalore. Many of the older videos, and also in India, San Francisco Center, he did many videos.
So what's next? Who's
We have from Shanta Maharaj, is he available or not? Shanta Maharaj.
Shanta Maharaj?
We'll have to call him.
Okay, so maybe while we're
I also have an offering from Bhaktivedānta Avadhūta Mahārāja.
Yes.
Maybe we can call Shanta Maharaj in the meantime, getting late, and then we'll have somebody else. Maybe we can go through Gopanandini, Mataji's.
Are you ready?
Do you know where it is?
Right, here we go.
Okay.
This is one. This is Gopanandini.
Okay, here's Gopanandini.
Okay, and then we'll do Rajas and then Vilasanis. Just read Gopanandini, and we have the right answer.
We can let her go first.
Just have them ready so we have to wait every time.
Okay, this is a collection of offerings from Nandini Jagana in Switzerland in Vrindavan Vilasini. This is for the disappearance of Sri Govinda Ghosh, prayers for Avadhūta Mahārāja on the occasion of his farewell ceremony. Thakur advised, "My friend, you are being washed away in material nature's waves of time. Please try to understand that you are the eternal servant of God, then everything will stop and you will be eternally happy." 21 purport, the are inclined to activities remain in the material sphere, but persons who engage in devotional service reach the abode of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, where there is neither birth nor death nor different varieties of life, under the influence of the law of karma. The best interest of the living entity is to engage himself in devotional service and go back home, back to Godhead. By Srila Thakur. Śrīmāda Bhaktivedānta 4:17-30, purport, abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender up to me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. Srila Bhaktivedānta Thakur says, "My dear Lord, whatever I have, even my mind, the center of all material necessities, namely my home, my body, and whatever I have in connection with this body, I now surrender them to you. You are not completely independent, now completely independent to act however you like. If you like, you can kill me. If you like, you can say, in any case, I am your servant, and you have every right to do whatever you like. My dear living entity, why are you being carried away by the waves of Maya, as stated in Śrīpāda Bhaktivedānta 1861, Ishvara Sarvabhutam, Pradeshe Arjuna Tishtati, Brahmayan Sarvabhutani, Dhamma Maya. Sorry if I messed that up. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjuna. It is directing the wanderings of all living entities who are seen as on a machine of the material energy. The living entity is carried in the machine, the body, through so many species of life on so many planets. Therefore, Bhaktivedānta asked the living entity why he is being carried away in these volume machines to be placed in so many different circumstances. He advises that one surmounts the waves of Maya by surrendering unto Krishna. When Indra came to Lord Brahma this time, Lord Brahma told her to stay with him for another 5 years and hear from him. In this way, after Indra had resided with him for 101 years while observing about science, according to him, this is instruction. He said, this body is mortal and within the grips of death. In reality, the soul is Shariri, the embodied. The gross body of 5 elements and the subtle body composed of the mind, intelligence, and body are the 2 coverings of the Atma. When the soul attains his constitutional position and thus becomes pure whenever he hears or sees all blissful, he is the topmost person. Eternally in union with the Supreme Soul, he resides in the spiritual realm, immersed in the bliss of divine play. By the mercy of Sri Guru and Sri Bhagavan, the meaning of all the scriptures is realized by one who strictly cultivates one-pointed bhakti for Vishaya Vigraha Sri Bhagavan, who is the object of bhakti, and Ashraya Vigraha Sri Gurudev, who is the abode of bhakti. The Śrīmāda Bhagavatam is the spotless Purana. It is most dear to the Vaishnavas because it describes the pure and supreme knowledge of the Paramahamsas. This Bhagavatam removes the means for becoming free from all material work, together with the processes of transcendental knowledge, renunciation, and devotion. Anyone who seriously tries to understand Śrīmāda Bhagavatam, who properly hears and chants it with devotion, becomes completely liberated. Adopted from the Go like rate number 5. If we might be infinite broadness and depth of the absolute, how can we value anything here? This world is all relative. We must not allow ourselves to be cast down by any events here. We must go forward in our march towards the truth. We may fail any time, anywhere. It does not matter. It may be our master's will. Still again, no other alternative than to try for his grace. Sri Goswami Maharaj. Whatever we know about birth and death in this world does not apply to Śrīpāda Bhaktivedānta. In fact, instead of saying birth and death, the Vaishnavas use the terms Avibhav and Terabhav, appearance and disappearance, Prakat and Apa, manifested and unmanifested, and so forth. By using the words birth and death, a kind of mournful mood, full of disbelief, grief, and lamentation arises in the heart. But such moods do not arise when we use words like Avibhav, Terabhav, or Prakat, and Prakat. Spoken at Sri Chaitanya Math, Sri Dalmaya Purva Srila Bhaktivedānta Goswami Mahārāja, Harikatha found by Dasanadasi and Nandini Jagan in Vrindavan Velocity. Here is the Nandini Jagan's personal offering. My garland of flowers to our beloved Avadhūta Mahārāja and friend. I wish I were there in Avadhūta with you now, dear most Avadhūta Guruji, and spend some more of those precious moments in your inspiring presence. But you know that spiritually I am always with you. The gift you took at my small services while staying in our home for 3 months is so precious and unforgettable and will stay with you forever. Thank you for your help on the Bhagavad Gita for children and the Book of Krishna's wonderful incarnations and expansions. You have accepted me like a father helping his daughter to complete and finish her schoolwork. I have great respect for your sincerity and honesty and your firm faith to the Prabhupada and Sri Gurudev and Lord Nityananda and Lord Prabhu. You propagated the holy names in the whole world and encouraged everyone. Always pray in Nityananda Prabhu and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Simple living and high thinking was your motivation, which you live boldly and naturally at a daily basis. You have been an amazing example of Vaishnava etiquette and such a great friend. You never criticized and always supported everyone in a wholesome understanding of their true self as an eternal individual soul. Your approach and attitude was always so generous and welcoming. You never tried to put yourself above others, but showed them the right way of teaching by your own example and your costless mercy. Yes, you are a true Avadhūta. I tried to hide my feelings, but now I cry and wash your lotus feet with my burning tears. Stay blessed, my friend. May all our great Guru Bhargava protect and guide you. May Srila Prabhupada and Srila Gurudev Narayan Maharaj shower their limitless mercy upon your great soul. Shri Krishna speaks in verse 7:14 of Bhagavad Gita, my divine energy Maya, consisting of the three modes of nature, is very difficult to overcome. But those who surrender unto me pass over it very easily. Hare Krishna, Dasana Dasi, and Adana.
Now we're going to Rishikesh Prabhu will read the Jandananda Guru's offering to Avadhūta
In New Braj, we are feeling a mixture of both sadness and happiness regarding the departure from this world of our dear Avadhūta Mahārāja. Sadness because we will be deprived of the association of such a humble and exemplary devotee as Maharaj. Happiness because he departed so auspiciously in Mayapur on Mahadvadas during the Avadhūta Parikram, surrounded by so many devotees. We will show them. He was such an inspiration to all of us, dedicated example, and he was loved by all who have the good fortune of knowing. Śrīpāda Bhaktivedānta Avadhūta Ki Jai. No, actually I only knew Avadhūta Mahārāja for a short time. I think I first met him in America, but I didn't have so much personal association.
Okay, and now we'll hear the offering from Coconut.
The whole world is feeling a loss at the departure of our dear friend, Śrīpāda Avadhūta Mahārāja. My heart feels great sorrow. Surely, Srila Prabhupada and Srila Gurudev have important service for him everywhere or elsewhere. He embodied kindness and he lived the tenets of Krishna consciousness. He made no artificial show for the benefit of others, but quietly practiced what he preached. In this way, he was exemplary. His purity inspired us all. I will always remember Śrīpāda Avadhūta Mahārāja, Govinda Dasi.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I don't. But the Damodar Prabhu said that he had. Huh? Is there anything you did?
You weren't here when I spoke about please don't make a look at his face. It expressed better what was going on in the itself.
I guess I first met Srila Avadhūta Mahārāja as Upananda Prabhu when Gurudev, I think it was his second tour to Los Angeles, and we lived there in Los Angeles. So I had booked the Vasana Hall right next to the LA Temple for Gurudev to speak. But then a devotee from Badger said, well, if it's there, I won't go because I don't want to be involved in any controversy. So then I thought, oh, okay, let me find someplace else. And then my daughter knew of this other place called the Boathouse in Marina del Rey. And so I went and booked it for the program, and I met Avadhūta Mahārāja because he was the one that was going to pay for it. So when I met him there for the first time, and he paid for it, and I said, oh, great, what's next? And he said, I don't know, what do you mean? I said, aren't you organizing the festival? And he said, no, I thought you were. And that began our managing Seva for the Los Angeles yacht trip. And it didn't really change too much after that. We served on the board of directors. Govinda Dasi was kind of facilitating that project, and Gurudev had sent my husband and I to do that seva. And I was living in Badger at the time. And did you tell that part of the story? How Gurudev sent you to go and help with Los Angeles? And then he said, well, what about my wife and the son? And he said, your wife should go to Los Angeles and help you. And Madhukar should stay in Brajajanandana and Gopanandi. And that began the first boys' ashram. And,
He was 14.
yeah. And anyway, and I was happy to get direct instruction from a pure devotee, but it was so hard to leave the Braj, because that was like the happiest place in my life, was living there. And, so then I went back down to Los Angeles, and Govinda Dasi and I just purchased the house. And then they asked us to be on the board of directors along with Avadhūta Mahārāja. I think they thought that we were like the easiest Prabhupada disciples to be able to work with. But little did they know that, and she was actually very fair. She had 3 Gurudev disciples on the board and 3 Prabhupada disciples. And so, even though we were kind of the easiest and mellowest Prabhupada disciples that they knew, we kind of always tried to tip the scale of balance from one extreme to the other. And so we lived together in the temple with Maharaj. He was always so strict with himself, but liberal with others. And I always had a motherly feeling towards him and all the brahmacharis at the temple. And I remember in the winter, I would say, Maharaj, I'm going to get you some socks. And he would say, no, if I get me socks, then I'll have to wash them. And he was such an example of just austerity, but with heart. And every morning he would be there for Mangal Arati, and he'd always bow down and do his full Dandavat pranam, even though he knew it was like hard for his body to do that. But he never moaned, he just was so exemplary in his austerity and in his Vaishnava qualities. And in Los Angeles, even though we were the board of directors, for some reason, we were lucky if we got like a 20-minute darshan when Gurudev was in Los Angeles at the end, right before we went to the airport. But in those short darshans, Gurudev would express so much faith in Avadhūta Mahārāja as the resident sannyasi there. And I remember I noticed that. And right before leaving, he would say, I can't remember his exact words, but basically entrusting things under his care. And I remember Avadhūta Mahārāja just touching his feet with all humility. And I guess that's my offering. It's such great fortune to have served together with him.
Just to give an example of Śrīpāda Bhaktivedānta Avadhūta Mahārāja's light, I mean not just light, floating light, but brilliant, humor. He lived in the temple right next to the deities. There was a room. But up in the tower, there were 2 ladies, Gurudev's disciples, who were very expert at bringing people to the temple, but the way they do it was unusual. They go out in short shorts, skating in Venice Beach, bring them back. Anyway, one time, Avadhūta Mahārāja came and he said, Rishabdev, I don't think it's so proper. You know, the reason these girls, I'm here, and I see what goes on. Actually, we saw what goes on very clearly at all times, everywhere. But he said, the only reason they're at Mangala Arati is because they're just getting back from their preaching, whatever that is. This cannot go on in the temple. But he said it not with any kind of anger or harshness or anything like that, but kind of with a humor. He was smiling when he said it. And it wasn't that he didn't have respect and even, affection for the girls. He did. But he knew that the standards had to be kept. But the way he said it says, so, anyways, it was. His mood was not one of being harsh, but just in seeing the humor of the world. Okay.
He was always so even-tempered, but kind to everyone. But he kept a very strict standard for himself.
There's from Sadhananda. It's a recording.
It's kind of long.
You can speed it up.
It's 15 minutes.
He had a lot of association.
And you should play. You should play. Okay. Okay.
The longer you wait to start, the longer it will take.
Okay. You see where it is?
Yes, it's leading.
Tell everybody who it is.
Oh.
Tell everybody.
Sadhananda Prabhu has the farm in the Texas Panhandle or near, and he had
Upananda and Janananda Prabhu and Sadhananda. I met them in the middle 80s in San Diego. They had a business there, which became very successful. We were told the Star Factory we talked about. Eventually they got a contract with Whole Foods. Anyway, so there were three partners with Janananda Prabhu, Upananda Prabhu, and Sadhananda Prabhu, who now is in charge of the farm in Texas. And they don't have the bliss bar business anymore, but they have what's called Gopal Foods. So Upananda Prabhu had much association, gave much association to Sadhananda Prabhu, who's speaking now.
Jai Śrīpāda Bhaktivedānta ki Jai, my Bhagavatas. I wanted to thank him for having had quite an impact on my life. We have worked together for like some 40 years. When he first came to the San Diego Temple in California, at that time he was a simple brahmachari, not demanding any respect, not behind the fire. But he had a certain purity about him. I understand that he was one of the first devotees to join in Australia, and since then had done a lot of preaching. He spent time in Africa with Brahmananda Swami and others, and always preach and travel. And so he would leave the San Diego Temple, go somewhere else, and then he would come back. At one point he started the commercial BBT party with Rasikananda, and going to temples, and from there to bookstores, New Age bookstores. And after they had gone to pretty much all the temples, they thought, well, how do we go to all the other cities? And since I had a motorhome and a car, they invited me, and I canceled my ticket at that time. And we toured many cities, and he would always be the one researching. He would always do a lot of research on how to preach, where to go. And we sold some $20,000 worth of books in paraphernalia a month during this 4 or 3 months. He even wanted to go to the borders bookstore, that big chain, for the head office, and they ended up taking the Bhagavad Gita, and the BBT would say, sell a lot of books to those bookstores over the following years on that 100 that we had made. But after returning to San Diego and calling on some of the accounts that we had sold to, and did not get any reorders because they apparently were not moving fast enough, we thought, well, if we had something people could consume, like Vedanta, which is spiritual, the books are spiritual, then they would all purchase them more. So we started the Mispa business, the Business Christmas, with the sesame seed bar and some sugar, and later, of course, we would find it more and more. And we got some 30 accounts in San Diego. Someone else contacted us with a health food store in Palm Desert, and then called us back a couple of weeks later, can I become a rep for you? And all of a sudden, we were getting 30 new accounts per month, and the business expanded to a point that we had to move up to the temple region. And yeah, he would always be the steady support and the pillar of doing whatever was needed. I would be more on the production side of things, and he would be more on the accounting side. One time, my parents were visiting from Germany, and I took some $6,000 out of the account of my motorhome for them to move around, and he didn't like it too much, but he was always quite tolerant. And because of his tolerance, he'd be able to tolerate me, which was not an easy thing. And even at one point, we had gotten a manager into the business who, I guess, had some eye on becoming a part owner, and politics was started in the business. And they tried to convince him to renounce and become a sannyasi in the long run. And so it wasn't difficult to convince him that way, because the business, the accounting side, had just gotten too big for him, and it wasn't really his forte. He was more into his forte, his preaching. And so he left the owner position and reversed business. Later on, we bought some land by my home, 9.5 acres for $50,000, and he would come quite often. He liked the project. He liked the idea of farming and self-sufficiency. So then 10 years later, we sold it for $360,000 because the land prices had gone crazy. And we looked around. Badgers seemed to be too unstable. We ended up buying 100 acres in Texas. He was there as a director and supporting our endeavors, doing the signatures when it was necessary. And over the years, he kept visiting. And in later years, more and more, and staying longer. But longer usually only meant like a week or two, the most. You never knew. He could be leaving up there, coming here and staying for 3 days, because he was unpredictable. Of course, he had gotten sannyasa in 2005, but he kept staying as a director on our non-profit. But he would travel a lot, and he would send people to the farm. And then after Śrīpāda left, sometime he also started giving shelter, initiation to other devotees. And yeah, a lot of devotees that came to the farm came here because of Avadhūta Swami. And he would always be wanting us to do more farming and more gardening. The business that we had, Bhaktivedānta Health Foods, took a lot of our time, and we were not so much dependent on other forms of income and self-sufficiency, because we did want to develop those. And he was always very supportive, and on a regular basis sent all kinds of links to a gardening project that would be a bit unusual, but quite promising. So when he would stay here, he would always come to the programs. He would never miss the Mangalanti. If later on he did, it was not a good sign. I would get worried, and I would go up and see him, thinking that he might not feel well. That's how steady he was, and determined in spiritual life, and very not so interested in the material aspect of it all, and taking us out and hurrying on as much as possible. Basically weekly, on weekends at least, we would go out, and we would not do that type of preaching if it were not for him, because we were always so busy in the business and developing the farming side here. Then later on, during the pandemic, he stayed for several months, which was very unusual, the longest, and it was very successful. So much here in Kanchanti was done, and preaching, giving shelter to others. So he wanted to go quite far. At one point, he was on a very special mission Nityananda. He went to see a sadhu in South India who was promoting special worship and meditation of Nityananda people, and Avadhūta Swami was right into it. But because of some cancer that he contracted, he ended up coming back here. And at that point, it was to a point where it really affected his health. And one time, a gentleman came here to the farm out of power, and I took him around, and then I introduced him to Avadhūta Swami when I found out that he was a doctor. And he was very humble, and immediately wanted to help him, and invited him to come to his hospital in Lubbock to get his experts to see what Avadhūta Swami had, what could be done. And they had a whole scheme developed of operations and how to help him. But when explaining about what to do, and the one side of his head with no ear, like a wall, he was not into it. Like, he was not into the Western medicine, the Western doctors in these operations. And he kind of took it that's at least how I saw it, that if it was Krishna's will or decision for him to suffer like that, then he would accept it. Even though he would try all kinds of natural cures, it was not successful. And then ultimately he ended up with Trilokanath at an island in Florida where we had taken him. And then he must have felt at one point that he did not have many more days, and immediately got a ticket for going to India. And Trilokanath said, I will go with you. Sanadi could go as well, and they only had 2 days to do so. They finally made it at Mayapur, you know the rest. But his strength to take something as Krishna's direction and not try to intervene too much was quite remarkable. I don't know if he even took painkillers, but he took it like kind of like a hero, down to the last man, but with humility and strength, spiritual strength. So we are all very touched by his behavior, being humble and unassuming, and so encouraging to devotees, always looking at the spiritual side, and being most merciful, even to the most wrong people that most temples would not accept. If they had just a little desire, he would accept them. And so that way, everyone was really touched, and he was kind of like our father in that sense, always being very supportive. And we are very grateful for this association, for his help over the years, and we are very convinced that he has made great use of his life, and became very successful in Krishna consciousness. Śrīpāda Bhaktivedānta Avadhūta Mahārāja.
Did he take painkiller? I don't think so. No, he took just any natural, nothing like Ayurvedic type stuff.
I just had 2 very quick memories. One popped up when Shinta mentioned his back. I mean, everyone saw the shape of it. And I've had severe back pain for more than a decade now. So I was asking him once, like, what do I do? And he said, oh, you just need the mercy of Guru and Nityananda. And I kind of challenged him, like, prove it. And he said that he was walking with Srila Gurudev, and he held an umbrella for Srila Gurudev, and Srila Gurudev paused. Everyone behind the whole party stopped. And he looked at him and said, I have so much respect for you. And Avadhūta Mahārāja said, no, Gurudev, please, I have so much respect for you. And then Avadhūta Mahārāja told me that he woke up the next morning and all of his back pain was no more, and he never had back pain since. That was the last of it, despite its condition and everything. So, yeah, it was amazing. He didn't tell me the year, but it was in Srila Gurudev's time, that's all I know. And then one other memory I just had from the Bhaktivedānta tour, we were in Oregon. It was Oregon. And we ended up, he wanted us to go to this marijuana party to do preaching. So we went to this big mansion marijuana party, and we set up a kirtan party, and we just started doing kirtan, but they weren't the most receptive, you could say. So then we had made a bunch of prasad, so we just offered them prasad, took our pots, and got out. cooking pots. One other memory was in Oregon. There was this band, this devotee band, Butter Thieves, and they were doing some sets, so we were like tagging along with them so we could do some preaching book distribution also. And we asked to do for Śrīpāda Bhaktivedānta Avadhūta to speak something before the set, and by some arrangement, they were saying, no, the manager was saying the set has to go first. Anyways, and then it was 10 p.m. and then we were like, oh, like it's too late now, you can't speak. Who are you going to speak to anyways? And he kind of looked down, and then he like glanced upwards like this, and said, I can speak to the stars in Narad. And then he like smiled really big, and then he went out and he saw everyone was sleeping on the floor, and he was just sitting like this, and from 10 p.m. to about 11 p.m. he was speaking. And I think me and the Benjamin were the only ones awake out of the 20 people there, and we were just sitting. And I thought how amazing, he had so much faith in Harikatha. And he didn't care what time it was, where it was, who the audience was. He just wanted to share Harikatha. It didn't even matter if people were sleeping on the ground right in front of him. It wasn't a matter to him. So these small memories popped in my head while everyone else was speaking, so I wanted to share it.
Can I share something really quick on my personal experience?
Hare Krishna. So Avadhūta Mahārāja came to my house twice when I used to do programs there. And the first time we had like a big normal group, plenty of warning, you know. The second time Gaura Sundar calls me and tells me, Avadhūta Mahārāja is coming to your house. I said, when? He said, now. I said, why? Right? And he said, I don't know, he wants to come. So he had just gotten off a plane. He got in Gaura Sundar's car, drove to my house. I had no time to do any proper preparation, not to invite anybody. Anyway, he gets there. There were, I think, maybe 3-4 young men there. One was my nephew, I remember, and one was Grudge, this kid who lived in my house, like a new devotee that rented a room for me. Anyhow, so Maharaj gets there. He looks exhausted. He sits on the couch, and he says, you know what, I think I need to rest for about a half an hour. So I popped up. I said, okay, let me get a sleeping mat right for you. He said, no, I'll just rest here. So he just laid down on his back on the couch for like half an hour and slept. And me and my friends, my nephew and my roommate, we all just looked at each other and waited. And we were quiet. About a half an hour he woke up, spoke some small Harikatha. And I remember something he said that I didn't believe, but I felt for sure he said it for the benefit of my nephew and my roommate, who both I knew were struggling with things young men in the party struggle with. He said, I couldn't resist sex desire if I wasn't old. He said this. Now, I don't believe it, and I don't think it's true, but I think he said it for their benefit. Like to maybe kind of help them feel like, you know, your struggles are normal. And one other thing, rewind, long before I ever knew what Krishna consciousness was, not that I do now, but anyway, it was maybe like 2002, 2003, and I became a raw food vegan. And I started buying these bliss bars. I found them in a local independent health food store in Long Beach, and they were so good. I remember there were 3 flavors. There was like a tropical flavor, and maybe a green flavor, and maybe like a pink flavor. Something, I don't know. But I would go and I would buy like everything, right? Especially if I was traveling, I would just take them because, like, what else am I going to eat if I don't find fruits and vegetables and these bliss bars? I'll starve. Anyway, so then fast forward some years later, I'm still raw foodist. I get a job in this other grocery store where I worked, and the owner said, you know the products, do you want to work here? And I said, yes. So one of the products they sold there were the Gopal bars. Remember, there was Italian, some Asian teriyaki maybe, and an Indian flavor. And same thing, and I used to get a discount because I worked there, so I would buy them by the case, also eat tons and tons of them. And then one day, Sadhananda came in because we were buying from him. I guess he was traveling on a sales tour or whatever. And he came in and I met him. And then years later, I saw him and recognized him at Baptist Fest, and he was giving samples of his Gopal bars out. And it wasn't until sometime later I stopped being a raw foodist that I found out that this operation was devotees. So in some way, Avadhūta Mahārāja contributed to my contact with Krishna consciousness because bliss bars and gopal bars. That's totally chowing on the prasad. So all glories.
I also just remembered one more thing, an expression of his humility. He wanted to go to Ekchakra and Nityananda Pharisee, and there was absolutely nowhere to stay. He was willing to stay on their tree anywhere. He told me that he ended up staying in an abandoned cow shed on the side of the ISKCON, and they didn't give him anything, like anything more than that shed. So he just packed up some hay together and laid on that for a night.
When was that?
This was many years back. I can't remember, but he just happily gathered up some hay and slept there, just to be in the abode of Lord Nityananda and Nityananda Pharisee.
Hare Krishna. So I didn't have much interaction with Śrīpāda Avadhūta Mahārāja. But in our Vedic scriptures there are many glorious pastimes mentioned how to leave body. Vittasur, we know how Vittasur left his body, the Bhagavatam we see. Then we see Vishnu Pitama, how Vishnu Pitama, looking at the moon-like face of Shri Krishna, leave his body. In Bhagavatam it is mentioned how Krishna's sweat is coming from Krishna's cheek, and he describes as a lotus flower, and how he meditates on that flower, that moon-like face of Krishna, and he takes his body. And then there is glorious, we all know, Srila Haridas Thakur. How Haridas Thakur, when Mahaprabhu, when Govinda brought Jagannath Prasad to Haridas Thakur, and Haridas Thakur was lying in the pool in the back, and Govinda asked, "Hey Haridas, are you going to honor Mahaprasad?" He said, "Today I don't want to eat the prasad because I have not finished my rounds yet. But at the same time, I have to honor prasad also." So Haridas Thakur took a little prasad and then started his chanting. Hearing this news, when Mahaprabhu came next day, when Mahaprabhu said, "Hey Haridas, are you well?" Haridas Thakur says, "My body is very well, my body is very fit, but my mind and my intelligence is not good. I am not able to complete my rounds." Mahaprabhu said, "Hey Haridas, you are Namacharya. You have done what you have came to this world." Same thing Sri Krishna also said to Sanatana Goswami when Sanatana Goswami was doing Govardhan Parikrama, saying, "Hey Baba, you don't have to do Govardhan Parikrama. You are old, you take rest." And same Haridas Thakur also. But still Haridas Thakur said, "No, I have to finish my rounds." And then after the afternoon pastimes, when Mahaprabhu again came next day, and when he took Haridas Thakur on his lap and loudly chanting Hare Krishna, like Mahaprabhu had got 5 heads chanting Harinam, and Bhakteshwar Pandit, all big Mahaprabhu's Parshad, they loudly doing Kirtan and taking Haridas Thakur to the Mahatirtha, and where Haridas Thakur Samadhi is there. Why explaining? Because we see from Vittasur to Bhishma Pitama, to Haridas Thakur, to our Gurudev, to Prabhupada, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada, Sridhar Goswami Maharaj, all very glorious. These two things are not under our control. One is where we take birth. This is not in our control. Anyone can take birth anywhere based on our karma. And where we leave our body, that is also not in our control. We might be traveling to maybe Delhi, Bangalore, or Los Angeles, Sydney. Suddenly something happens. It might leave body. We don't know. Anything can happen anytime. But to leave body in the Yoga Veer area, in the Antardip, I remember the last few days, just 2 days before, Śrīpāda Avadhūta Mahārāja with Damodar and Triloknath and others, they went to the jungle there. There are lots of snakes there, and literally there are snakes. There's a big cobra who stays there. We always chant Nityananda Prabhu while we pass in the evening. And that area is notoriously famous for snakes. And Śrīpāda Avadhūta Mahārāja doing kirtan, listening to the kirtan till late evening. They started before the sunrise, before the sunset. Then sunset happens. Now it's evening, night time, still doing kirtan and continuously doing. There are mosquitoes, even mosquitoes, snakes, still relishing the Yoga and this Shiva Sandan movie. Golokero Premadhanu and something. So this glorious state, glorious passing by is indeed very glorious. It's not in everyone's fortune. So we must understand, these days when people have got cancer, any other disease, they will rush towards America to get the cure. There are advanced medical technology, biotechnology, and someone coming here without Mahaprabhu's mercy, without Radharani's mercy, it is not possible. And also, when Avadhūta Maharaj just passed away, I had the opportunity to sing Śrīrūpa Manjari Pada and all our Vaishnav sons. So, till the time he was here, it was a festive atmosphere. And another secret I will tell, based on my experience. If Avadhūta Maharaj, if Radharani wanted, or if Avadhūta Maharaj wanted, he could have passed on Gaur Purnima time as well. But he just passed just 7 days, just the Ekadashi before Gaur Purnima. Because he did not wanted Gaur Purnima festival to be overshadowed by his passing away. So that's why he took the Ekadashi or the Dwadashi day just before Gaur Purnima. And that time, everywhere there is Harinam Sankirtan happening all across Navadvip. All Kridandi parts, sannyasis, Śrīpāda Sajjan Maharaj, Śrīpāda Padmanabh Maharaj, Raghav Maharaj, from Sridhar Maharaj, and all sannyasis from Keshavji, Devananda, Kridandi Maharaj, Tapasri Maharaj, all sannyasis were there that time in Vrindavan, that time in this Gupta Vrindavan. If it is been now Tapasri Maharaj is other place, Sridhar Maharaj is in Vrindavan, because he chose this time. It is really, if you see the divine arrangement, the time, the date, Gaur Purnima time, all sannyasis, Harinam Sankirtana, all sannyasis giving him shoulder towards his last rite. It is not a normal or a simple thing. It's very serious. That means he was very, although I did not take much association, but looking at the characteristics, very simple and hard. We can see that it is go and jungle in any place. His mercy always happened to devotees who are very innocent and very simple at heart. No hypocrisy. Like Avi Didi said, you are saying these things openly. If I have something, telling openly. So very simple, surrender, innocent at heart, and that's why it is Radharani's mercy happened. So it's very glorious, and we are all very fortunate to be able to serve Maharaj. Like when Haridas Thakur was served, Mahaprabhu said, whoever came and put prasad in Haridas Thakur, because Mahaprabhu went with his gamcha and started taking alms from all the shops of Jagannath. And then someone giving little rice, then Swarup Damodar Goswami gathered little rice from all the shops. so that everyone get benefit to the Haridas Thakur's mercy. And the Mahaprabhu said, whoever did this, gave little alms, little prasad, put some sand on Haridas Thakur, put some water and participated on that celebration, they will all get Krishna Priya. So similarly, we are also very fortunate to be able to participate in this ceremony. I thank you for everyone to come and making them participate. That's why I especially invited Murari Gupta, because Murari Gupta Pujari, so he also came, and I also invited Shivas Angan and others just to have some prasad. Because if we are taking Vaishnavas in our Vedic tradition, it is a tradition to give prasad to all Vaishnavas. So we are very fortunate, all Vaishnavas are here. Hare Krishna.
Tasmai Shri Namo Surve Puritamaya Karita Namaya Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Bhaktaya Namo Namo Pranamasu Śrīpāda Bhaktivedānta Avadhūta Mahārāja. Mahaprabhu asked Ramananda if Vaishnavas experience pain, what is that pain? And Ramananda explained the only pain Vaishnavas experience is that of separation of other Vaishnavas. So, as one devotee has said, that this is a simultaneous, it's simultaneous despondent. We're sad we don't have Avadhūta association, but we're very happy because he had a very powerful and exemplary and auspicious deal about leading this manifest plane that we're on. One senior and elevated Vaishnava in Vrindavan told me that when I was coming here, he said, you should know that your godbrother, Bhaktivedānta Avadhūta Mahārāja, he has entered into, as he explained, Vastu City, entered into the pastimes of Mahaprabhu, where he's performing his pastimes somewhere in this universe, or some universe, entered into those pastimes. He was so glorious, Vaishnava, dedicated to his Gurudev and the Shiksha Guru, his Sannyas Gurudev's mission throughout his entire life. And it was so exemplary. I never received one time with Bhaktivedānta Avadhūta Mahārāja that he exhibited anger. He has so much compassion and so much deep sincerity and so much tolerance, and very simple. Governor, I won't read it, but Damodar Prabhu was talking about his trip to Ekachakra. It was 2019. So there weren't facilities there because they arrived late. I remember when Gurudev gave him sannyas in 2004 or 5. It was so, we were curious, what would his name be? And when he said Avadhūta, perfect name. It was so transcendentally Avadhūta. So he arrived in Ekachakra, and there was no place to stay. So one Indian gentleman, who happened to be the person that donated this on property, he noticed two Vaishnavas. He approached Avadhūta Mahārāja from another devotee, I forget the other devotee. He said, oh, who are you? Where do you come? And so through that meeting, he found out that Avadhūta Mahārāja and the other devotee, Markandeya from Islam. They didn't have a place to stay, so he arranged next door to his they're using it now as a ghost shop.
cows. But it was very, if you knew Avadhūta Mahārāja, any place was, he was so renounced, so simple, and so simple-hearted, wherever he stayed. And Martin David commented on his glorification of Avadhūta Mahārāja that he only traveled very, very few things. He never met, some sannyasis. They traveled so much things, but Avadhūta Mahārāja, you could put it in one shoulder back, and one devotees, including the one he's wearing, he had one extra. Just very, very simple simplification, so exemplary and humble. And at the same time, he had so much exuberance and sincerity in following Hari Guru and Vaishnavas. His character, his activities, always where he traveled, performing Hari under summertime. Always. And I first met him in San Diego, and was after they had moved from 3rd Avenue near Pablo Apartment. They moved to the beach temple. I met him there. And Jayanta spoke, and Sadhananda spoke. They started a very successful company, partially because of his expertise and his wonderful ideas to market some of the things. And then I remember in Sanyas in 2004, 2005, you see the name of Avadhūta Mahārāja, and already I met him in different places preaching, because I would go to South America, Central America, Mexico, places. First a little bit of Spanish, and then it just grew and grew and grew. In fact, we were in one place, and I just told Avadhūta Mahārāja, I said, you speak a little Spanish, I think you will pick up very quickly, which he did. He picked up Spanish, so quickly, spoke to so many people in their native language. I don't want to take much time, but my appreciation and this whole assembly that we're having today in the Chaitanya Charitamrita is the perfection of the eyes is to see the pure Vaishnava. Perfection of the touch is to touch their Vaishnava, especially their holy glorious feet. And the perfection of the ears is to hear the Harikatha from the Vaishnava, and especially, and also to take his remnants. Three things are very powerful. The water that washes the Vaishnava's feet, the transcendental influence feet, and the transcendental remnants of that Vaishnava, especially this transcendental remnants of it coming from its mouth in the form of Harikatha. So we're perfecting by hearing the glories of this extremely elevated Vaishnava. And I'm hearing many things that put it deeper in my understanding of how elevated my godmother was. Because sometimes through the familiarity, you don't realize the extreme effect that Vaishnava has on other persons that are in association with him. So, Maharaj, please forgive me if I've ever treated you familiarly and had that interrupt my understanding of your true glories. We're so blessed with this association, and we're perfecting our ears by hearing the glories of this wonderful Vaishnava, Śrīpāda Bhaktivedānta Avadhūta Mahārāja. And we pray to him to please, he's explained how he's in the hearts of all of his followers and disciples always, but he's also present by our prayers. We ask him to give us his blessings. We may be diligent on this process like he was, very, very dedicated and sincere, and very strict with himself, but lenient with others. Our tendency is to be strict with others and lenient with ourselves. And he exhibited
It's very, very powerful. Śrīpāda Bhaktivedānta Avadhūta Mahārāja. Om Ajnana-timirandasya Jnananjana-shalakam Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Śrī-Gurave Namaha. Vancha-kalpatarubhyascha Kripā-sindhubhyo Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prayavadayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaurātishe Namah. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Desha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tata Kanchana Gauram Radhe Vrindavadeshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Vindaya Sudevai Krishna Bhakti Vivek Sacha Chayanamo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. One more. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare. Śrīpāda Bhaktivedānta Avadhūta Mahārāja ki jai. So, my dear God brother, fellow disciple of our beloved Srila Prabhupada, Bhaktivedānta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada, and also fellow Siksha disciple of our beloved Guru, the Siksha Gurudev, Nityalila Pravishya, Om Vishnupad, Ashvatara Sata Shri Bhaktivedānta Avadhūta Goswami Maharaj. And one who also honored and worshipped Srila Gaura Govinda Goswami Maharaj, Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj. So I'm remembering my god brother. And I was fortunate to be here in his final days. This was unexpected, as always it was, that Avadhūta Maharaj would arrive somewhere. But suddenly one day, I heard he's here at Bhaktivedānta Kuñja in Mayapur. So I came to see him as soon as I possibly could. And I remember seeing him at that point because I understood already that his condition had deteriorated, because I heard from our Pujapad Shanta Maharaj, who had seen him in some recent months in America. And so I understood that now this cancer is becoming more progressed, and so it must be the time now when it's time for him to go. And when I came up to his room here and entered his room, then I could immediately see, oh, he should simply come here to read this body. It's time. It's absolutely time. And pretty much all of us could also see that. He came here to Mayapur with utter determination. Because I also heard how he booked his own ticket and what we just heard from Damodar. My cancer is gone and I'm feeling quite fit. I'm coming there to Mayapur. So I was able to also be along with his personal servants, Devendranath, Damodar, Sri Lokanath, Sahadev, who did tremendous service for him these 5 days. But just as we heard from Sukanta Prabhu, this was a very powerful experience. This place was very transcendentally surcharged because he was here and in such high level of consciousness. And this is one thing I noticed immediately. Despite the fact that he was very, at least when the day when I came in to see him, he was sitting up, but it was very obvious that he was very tired. After some short time, then he also chose to lie down. But in seeing him, and also his speech was not so audible at that time. It was not so easy to make out what he was saying. But one thing I noticed is that he was completely to everything that was being spoken, everything that was being expressed by others. And somehow or other, I just got into a mood of wanting to just reminisce a little bit. And somehow it came into my mind because now Avadhūta Mahārāja had come here to Mayapur, right near the yoga peat of Mahaprabhu. He had come from right here to Mayapur. So I somehow began to think about the first time that I came to Mayapur. And Avadhūta Mahārāja was also aware of those times when we were with Srila Prabhupada here, when we were with Srila Prabhupada here, and Gauraprabhupada and all of that. And so I just began to talk freely, and Avadhūta Mahārāja was also hearing, and there were some other devotees in the room, they were also hearing, and it just turned into a very blissful remembrance of how we came up with playing from New York the first time that I came to India. I was describing the story, and he was completely listening and relishing, And then, as I was describing that, then I also explained how we came first time to see the yoga peat as we were driving by in the buses, and how there was also so much remembrances about Srila Prabhupada arriving the next morning in his car, and there was only rice fields, all of these things. So it just turned into this sweet atmosphere that I could understand that he had come here to just relish and taste as much as possible prior to his departure. And a couple of days later, I came here to give a class. And when I arrived, he was sitting right there, actually almost lying down. But he wanted to hear. And we were reading the end of our Navadvipam Avadhūta description of Lord Nityananda Prabhu's parikrama with Jiva Goswami, Navadvipam. So we were thinking of that. We had to give 2 more classes to complete that during this time. So Avadhūta Mahārāja was so very much, as I've heard again and again from all the speakers, practically everybody that spoke, Avadhūta Mahārāja had such qualities that just shined forth from him. Although he was one of the most unbecoming devotees that I think I've ever met, who actually had such a high level of good qualities, such a strong determination to serve Guru and Gauranga and to preach, that his whole life, when I began to reflect upon his whole life was complete sacrifice. There was never a time in his life where there was some kind of sense gratification direction. It was all for saving. I mean, even the story that we just heard about how he started the Prashad business and that, but it was all for preaching. It was all for saving, you know. And so, although I didn't know Avadhūta Mahārāja prior to like around the mid-90s, I met him in Los Angeles. Only briefly met him, but I really didn't know him. I had heard, oh, there's this devotee named Upananda who spent nearly 10 years in Africa. And I could relate with that because I also had spent a couple of years in Africa. I was on the East Africa, he's on the West Africa side. And my name was Urukram, and his name was Upananda, so the that I connected with him. But, you know, to understand what that means, it's not an easy thing to be in Africa, preaching, you know, tremendous austerities, and what he would have to undergo to be there constantly for so many years. But then I began to hear that he was also a pioneer in Australia. He also had something to do with the preaching in China. And when our Gurudev, Śrīpāda Bhaktivedānta Avadhūta came the first time to Russia, in Moscow in the year 2000, I was very fortunate to be involved in coming there to Russia the previous year and introducing him for the first time to all the Russian devotees. And then the next year, in the year 2000, Nadadas Mahārāja, he also came and traveled all over Russia announcing that this pure devotee, Śrīpāda Mahārāja, is coming. And when they've arrived, he also was so, he just completely melted all the devotees' hearts. When he came off the plane and came down the escalator, 80, 100 devotees were waiting and they were weeping and weeping. Then he came in the vehicle to the place of where we had arranged for the festival. The pretty batty conditions after the communist period, so we did the best we could. And when he came there was another 120 devotees waiting as he pulled up in this big van that we had to drive him from the airport. And he came out, he walked up on these about 10 steps. There was a platform, the entrance to this big building where he would have his programs. And when he stood there, he looked out at the Russian devotees, and they were all weeping. And then Gurudev said, he said, I remember when the Russian devotees were being placed in prison, and how this could happen, only because they were chanting and preaching the names of Krishna. So I was praying for them as they were in prison for their release. But soon after that, they were released. And then he looked at all the devotees and he says, I have come for all of you. So who was there? Avadhūta Mahārāja, before he took sannyas. He also helped to finance the ticket of Gyanadas to travel all over Russia. He also somehow or other equipped us by buying a laptop so that we could stay in touch through the beginning days of internet communications and all of that. So what I've seen is that Avadhūta Mahārāja had no attachment at all to any money, any kind of comforts, any kind of name or fame, things that people desire. He had no desire for that. I can remember because Nishtitadidi told about a pair of socks. Because that was one of my first in Los Angeles, probably around 94, 90, when the Rose Temple, when they first opened the Rose Temple. And Gurudev came and visited. And I saw at that time, and I saw how he had already received sapphire cloth from Gurudev. And I could see how his clothing was disheveled, not matching, and I noticed that he had 2 different color socks on, And so I actually approached him, because we used to go, as we were traveling around the world, we would buy a big, bundle of socks from the Costco that were like that, So I came to him one day and I said, I got 2 pairs of socks. And he just was so disinterested, like I was going to hurt his mood, So I watched Avadhūta Mahārāja through all those years, from the time that especially also took sannyas in 2004 or 5, until this time. It was practically 20 years. And Avadhūta Mahārāja never stopped traveling. It's the amazing thing. Like I said, even during the lockdowns, when I'm locked down in Badger, California for 2 whole years, Avadhūta Mahārāja was still moving here and there, and nothing would stop his travel. Preaching, 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 always. And I also had a chance to be with him in Florida once for a week. We shared the same apartment where we were staying. I watched his sadhana, bhajan, and how he conducts himself and everything. I always had so much admiration for him, because he was truly, genuinely, very vairagya vidya, nija bhakti yoga. He was completely detached and full of knowledge, full of vidya. So, and this carried through right up until the very end, when he was in, I can just imagine so much suffering condition when I saw his, but he was never expressing any kind of discomfort, pain, nothing, And so I just feel myself fortunate, especially to have come here today and heard firsthand from the mouths of the devotees so many wonderful memories and glorifications. I think that this recording, all these devotees speaking, should be broadcast everywhere on the internet, YouTube channels, Facebook, whatever, so everyone can hear who is this person, Avadhūta Mahārāja. So, just one last thing, his name Avadhūta. And everybody has mentioned Avadhūta all during this time. But Śrīpāda Avadhūta Mahārāja was very interested, extremely attracted to the supreme Avadhūta. And who is that? Nityananda Mahārāja. And Nityananda Prabhu was always distributing the holy names, going to the lowest persons, everything. Nityananda. So therefore, Nityananda brought him here, and Gauranga Mahaprabhu brought him here, and arranged for him to depart on that most auspicious day, at that most auspicious time, and in the most auspicious location you could want. And that was proof in itself how very glorious was his life. So I said it in the beginning, that I see him to be a very extraordinary disciple of Srila Prabhupada, Siksha disciple of Srila Narayan Maharaj, follower of Gaur Govinda Maharaj, and sannyas, disciple of Srila Narayan Maharaj. And he served in such an exemplary way for his whole life. So that is why I feel that, he's kind of on that same level that I mentioned about Jayananda Prabhu, who Srila Prabhupada directly told. And there's no question about it that Avadhūta Mahārāja is in such a high situation. Of course, we cannot know fully, because only Krishna knows that. Only the exalted associates of the Lord, they know. But just like on almost the last day before he left, I came in front of him, and our eyes met. At that time, we could not really communicate anymore, but our eyes met. And I just looked at him and I said, Maharaj, you are going to such a high destination. And that was my last communication with him. So, his passing, his ceremony of being brought to the Ganga, and the cremation and all of that was so powerful to be there, to witness that, and to be present. So I think that the glories of Avadhūta Mahārāja are going to live forward into the future directly, because he stood out in such a way that he had no desire to stand out at all. But he stood out with the mood of not wanting to stand out. And that humility, that clear personification of the third shloka of Sikshastakam, Srimāda Pisunichena, Torora Pistarishvana, Amanina, Manadena, Kirtaniya, Statahari. He was doing like the personification of that. And therefore he was always chanting, always preaching, always broadcasting the Krishna. So I'm praying in this assembly today to pay my Dandavat Pranams at his divine lotus feet and to pray for his mercy, because he's in such a place now that he can really shower mercy on all of us. And he actually said that also to the Indian bodies of absolute Jigori Maharaj, Sridhar Maharaj, Siddhartha Maharaj, when they came to him, and they told him, we're praying for you, Maharaj. And then he said to them, yes, I'm also praying for you. So this is Avadhūta Mahārāja, great servant of Srila Prabhupada, and I'm sure that he's looking down at us as we are remembering him and giving his blessings to us. Śrīpāda Avadhūta Mahārāja ki jai, Bhaktivedānta Avadhūta Mahārāja ki jai, Gaur Premanande. So what is next? Is there any contemplable what we should do now? Oh. Okay, then we should have short kirtan. Yes.
Flowers?
Are there flowers? I don't know.
Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare Hare
Śrīpāda Bhaktivedānta Avadhūta Mahārāja ki jai. Bhaktivedānta Mahārāja ki jai. Bhaktivedānta Vamana Goswami Mahārāja ki jai. Bhaktivedānta Śrīpāda Mahārāja ki jai. Jai Nityananda Vishnu Pada Ashtatara Sata Shishila Bhakti Pragyan Kesha Goswami Mahārāja ki jai. Nityananda Vishnu Pada Ashtatara Sata Shishila Bhaktivedānta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Bhagavat Srila Gaurkishore Das Goswami Mahārāja ki jai. Srila Satchidananda Bhaktivedānta Thakur ki jai. Vaishnava Sambhav Srila Jagannath Das Swamiji Maharaj ki jai. Śrīpāda Guru Varga ki jai. Śrīrupa Sanatana Bhakta Raghunath Śrīpāda Bhaktivedānta Avadhūta Goswami Prabhu ki jai. Śrīla Swarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Gaur Parshad Vrinda ki jai. Namacharya Śrīla Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem se Gaur Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Śrīla Sadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Shri Navadvipa Dhama ki jai. Shri Antardvip Mayapur Dhama ki jai. Jai Shri Purushottam Kshetra Jagannath Puri Dhama ki jai. Jai Shri Brajmandal Vrindavan Dhama ki jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopi Govardhan Dvarashavanatmaka Shri Brajmandal Dhama ki jai. Shyama Kunda Radha Kunda Kunda Tulsi Bhakti Devi ki jai. Jai Shri Giriraj Govardhana ki jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Shri Jagannath Dev ki jai. Bhakti Vinashana Shri Sringadev ki jai. Krishna Prabhu Shri Prahlad Maharaj ki jai. Charodam Charo Sampradaya Charo Acharya ki jai. Akaramatra Shri Chaitanya Mat ki jai. Orananya Shakarat Samuha ki jai. Shri Vishva Vaishnava Sabha ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Tribhuvana Pavana Harinam Sankirtana ki jai. Tribhuvana Mangala Harinam Prabhu ki jai. Hare Krishna Mahamantra ki jai.
सचिदानंद हरि की जय, श्री नित्यानंद महाजन की जय, श्री पंच तत्व की जय, समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय, समागत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय, निताई गौर प्रेमानंद हरि हरि बोल श्री अवधूत महाराज की जय।
Hare Krishna.